Welcome back to Askewed Reviews, and we are continuing the Fast and Furious franchise since around this time of year it's all about family. And today we are doing the 2023 film Fast X. Here is your trivia question for today. What is the license plate for the car Shaw drives off in? The answer will be at the end of this episode. So our film starts off partially reliving the events that occurred in Fast 5. We rewatched the sequence of events where Dom and Brian stole the vault from Hernan Reyes. However, this time around, we find out that Reyes actually had a son named Dante. His son was actually there when the vault was stolen. In fact, he even raced after both Dom and Brian trying to stop them. But he was in the car that got knocked over the bridge by the vault. He fell into the water, but somehow survived. Unfortunately, his father did not. We then jump ahead to our present time, which is about 6 years after the events of F9 The Fast Saga. Little Brian has grown up quite a bit, and of course, Dom is already teaching him how to drive a car. The team is notified that they're required for a mission that will be in Rome. This time around, though, Dom and Letty have decided to step back and just take care of Brian, while the rest of the team goes to take care of the mission. So our team for this mission then consists of Roman being in charge, along with Ramsey, Tej, and Han helping out. So while our group is on the way to Rome, we get an unwanted house guest at the Toretto family household, in the form of Cypher, who has been quite badly injured. She tells them a story about how someone named Dante Reyes came to her organization and took it over, and is now gunning for Toretto and the rest of his crew. It's also around this time that Little Nobody notifies Dom and Letty that there was no mission in Rome. So Dom and Letty hurry off to try and help their friends from not getting into a trap. But don't worry about little Brian, he's being watched after by Auntie Mia, and of course Uncle Jacob shows up just for some extra security. Our crew quickly finds out that Dante Reyes may not seem like he's all there, but he is quite a bit of a mastermind, and is willing to burn down the entire world just to get his revenge on Dominic Toretto and the rest of his family. He also won't stop there. Anyone and everyone that has ever helped out Dominic Toretto is also on his hit list. And to make matters worse, with Mr. Nobody missing, the agency has new people in charge. Some of them seem to be willing to help, others are ready to put Dominic and the rest of his family at the top of their most wanted list. So will Dante Reyes be able to get his revenge, or will Dom Toretto be able to stop him in time and save his family? Louis Leterrier was brought in to be the director of this film, but there was quite a few other options that the studio almost went with. These included David Leitch, F. Gary Gray, James Wan, Anthony and Joe Russo, Peyton Reed, and Rawson Marshall Thurber. The movie was filmed in Puerto Rico, Portugal, England, Italy, and California. This, of course, was Jason Momoa's first appearance in the Fast and Furious series, and he did a great job, in my opinion, as Dante Reyes. I loved his controlled chaos that he brought to the character, and it almost made him feel like he was a comic book villain. Apparently, in early scripts, the idea was to have Dante and Ames be brothers. I'm glad they didn't go that direction, as it just would have felt a little too forced. Also, speaking about Ames, we can't forget to talk about another new actor to the series, Alan Ritchson, who also did a great job as his character. Now, apparently, the role was originally intended to go to Keanu Reeves, but that didn't end up happening. It's also interesting to note that with Momoa and Ritchson both being in this film, we now have two actors who have played live action Aquaman. For instance, Momoa did it in the DCU, and Ritchson did it on the TV series Smallville. Another new addition to the cast was Brie Larson as the character of Tess, also going by Little Miss Nobody. Another new character they introduce in this film is Isabel, played by Daniela Melchior, which I don't have an issue with her being brought in. I do feel like it wasn't necessary, but who knows what she'll become later on in the last two movies here, as she is in fact Elena's younger sister and of course little Brian's aunt. There's also another new Toretto that gets brought into the story, as we finally get to meet Dom, Mia, and Jacob's abuelita, played by Rita Moreno. And finally, another new face to the series, Pete Davidson cameos as the character of Bowie. Now, there's also some returning faces as well. For instance, Scott Eastwood comes back as Little Nobody after being absent from F9. Louis da Silva Jr. also makes a quick return as Diogo, a small character that he played in Fast Five. And of course, we can't forget to talk about the two cameos near the end of the film, where we actually have Dwayne Johnson back as Hobbs. Now, whether or not he'll appear in the next full feature, or if it'll just be another spin off series like Hobbs and Shaw, we'll have to see. But at the very least, it does look like both Dwayne Johnson and Vin Diesel have made up since their issues that they had on the set of The Fate of the Furious. So even though Sung Kang suggested that the fans start a hashtag campaign to bring Giselle back, just like how they did with Justice for Han, this actually didn't need to happen, as it was a plan from the beginning of this film to actually bring Giselle back, even though she just has a small cameo at the end of the movie. Now, I'm interested to see what they do with this because I'm kind of annoyed that they're bringing her back. Not that I didn't love the character, but it just seems like how or why. And I'm going to be especially annoyed if they try to go the route of, oh, she doesn't remember who she is, like Letty did, or, oh, she was working for Mr. Nobody, just like Han. One last thing related to cameos. The flight attendant that helps Jacob and little Brian is actually played by Paul Walker's daughter, Meadow Walker. This is actually the first time in the Fast and Furious series where they end on a cliffhanger. Also, the original plan was to start with this movie and make it into a two-part finale. Now it's changed a bit as this is the first of a three-part finale. So, thanks to the character of Ames, the timeline has technically been rewritten for the Fast and Furious series. You see, at one point in the series, when Letty was supposedly dead, her tombstone makes it seem that the events of the Fast and the Furious started in 2004. But Ames states that it started in 2001. But who knows? I mean, this is the same series where they've gone to space and they've dealt with superpowers. Here's something I found cool. Apparently, Michelle Rodriguez and Charlize Theron were actually not given a director for their fight scene and were allowed to choreograph it themselves. At one point in the film, Han and Dom say Los Bandoleros for life, which of course is a reference to the short film prequel that came before Fast and Furious. Did you happen to notice that the tiny Tej RC car says, all right, fire 'em up," which was actually Ludacris's first line in Too Fast, Too Furious. In Shaw's garage, you can actually see the flip car from Fast and Furious 6. Also, Shaw's code to his hideout is the same code for his car in the transporter, 1732. Now it's time for the family counter. The word family is said in this film 27 times. 9 times by Dante, 3 times by Dom, 3 times by Abuelita, 3 times by Ames, 2 times by Hernan Reyes, twice by Tess, 2 times by Queenie, once by Jacob, once by Bowie, and once by Cypher. So when it comes to the film Fast X, this is definitely one of my favorites. I really like this movie because, unlike the one that came before it, F9 was a lot of stuff jam packed that ended up being kind of confusing. This one had a lot of stuff jam packed, but they really gave everything enough time and spacing so you got to see what everyone was doing, and it didn't feel too hurried for anyone's story. So I really like this one. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, what is the license plate for the car Shaw drives off in? The license plate reads RO4DRGE, or Road Rage. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.